You're now live.
We're live. This is the Committee of Conference on 360, H.360. And the Senate is responding to the House's proposal of amendment yesterday. I am scrolling through. We've agreed since, and we took all your findings and intent. We did agree to change the typo that said the broadband authority to board. Okay, at the first place, we've got, I gotta find the page number here, page 7. You had struck under broadband service, you had struck mass market retail. We've been told that's in the federal definition, so we would like to put that back in.
And I'd heard that from Maria as well, so I think that's fine.
Okay. We have agreed with striking community and renumbering with department. We're getting now down to top of page 8. We do want to add in a small communications carrier. We've got one, probably two. There's got to be some other small cable providers that would like to be able to string broadband. And Senator Pearson, did you have?
Yeah, I thought maybe I'd just jump in. This is probably what we spent the most time wrestling through, and we tried to kind of meet you in the middle. One of our, so you'll see we agreed with your language, which is now C, which is your language, working in conjunction. So that's where you wanted Consolidated or somebody to be working in conjunction with the CUD, but get a grant directly. We are proposing to strike the next one here, to not go with D, because we were getting uncomfortable with the idea. Well, working with the municipality, we weren't convinced would be super meaningful. A municipality is going to be very eager to say yes to anybody that's quickly promising to deliver broadband. We also were kind of uncomfortable with this prospect of a CUD having a veto power over someone else coming into the territory. So what we're trying to do here is acknowledge that there are small providers that can help us achieve universal service. And if they are, committed to universal service, and the board determines that they're not interfering with a CUD, they're not jeopardizing a CUD or impacting their business case, then they would be eligible directly, but only under those very strict conditions. And we like that because Senator Brock made this point repeatedly. This avoids the CUD veto power, leaves that determination and analysis in the board, because none of us want them competing. But in the cases where there's not a CUD, or if a small provider was just tidying up the edge of town and the CUD was fine with that, something like that, this would allow us that permission. So we're giving you what is now C, and then bringing back in the small telecoms, and though in our definition expanded those to be 5 counties or smaller, because we had heard that 3 counties, our initial attempt, excluded some operators that we didn't see why we would exclude them.
Yeah.
So I want to understand some of that was very helpful, Chris, in terms of just kind of going through how the 3 Senate conferees had kind of arrived at this. One of the things I wanted to understand, because obviously we as well have been pretty focused on this area. We have been focused on it also in conjunction with a paragraph that is in the construction grant section, which is, I think it's subsection E. I just wanted to, when you said you were thinking through how these fit together, I wanted to just understand if it was that subsection E. I'm not sure what page it's on. It's maybe page 19 or 20. Was that part of your?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
I'll check it, but our thought was, I guess we were seeing there was more safety for everyone in having the board make a determination that, you've got a select board, the town belongs to a CUD, but somebody comes in and says, I'll do your valley, and they're going to be hard pressed to say, no, we got to wait for the CUD, who might not get here for 3 years. The board looks at it and can do that one step back and determine, I believe, that it is the most cost-effective, efficient, and would not impair the CUD's ability to provide service to the rest of the town. So, Senator Pearson,
Just, it's helpful for me to illustrate this and our thinking. Senator Brock brings up the town of Berkshire, part of a CUD, right next to Franklin Telecom. Under the municipality construct that you all had, Berkshire Select Board is presented with, Joe's fabulous internet proposal. And I promise you, I'll bring you this internet in the next 6 months and blah, blah, blah. How is the select board ever going to say no, right? They're going to be under a lot of pressure to deliver quickly. And that just felt uncomfortable to us and not a realistic check in the way that I understood you to be coming from. So we've just tried to push this 4,000 foot view up to the board where they would make it, or where they determine, well, this will hurt the CUDs, so no, it's not eligible, or this doesn't hurt the CUDs and is a proposal that's universal, 100. Here's your grant.
Another issue, as we looked at this, was there just seemed to be a degree of unfairness. If you have an entity that has a financial benefit motive in the decision, making that decision, as opposed to giving it to someone who is independent.
Again, I just want to understand.
Questions. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I don't want to step in front of my House colleagues if they want to chime in. But
yeah, I mean,
so what I was focused on was keeping B in here. I wasn't actually looking at D. I was focused on B, the small communications carrier portion. And what I think I heard you say was a focus on the board making a determination as to whether or not that small communications carrier was doing work that was prudent, kind of in the context of a CUD and what their plan is, and does it in some way undermine that plan? I'm just trying to understand the kind of the thought path that you all were taking.
I think you put it more eloquently than we did.
Okay, and so I think I understand what you were thinking there. That I also think I understand what you're talking about with D, but I didn't understand what you were saying with regard to the board determination. And I'm a little confused by the color coding here. Are you proposing that we take D out?
Yes.
Okay. Just to be clear.
Yeah. So, Madam Chair, if I might,
yes, I'm still finding the page.
We didn't love the construct that you had in D, where that was sort of the way that a small private provider could get in to a grant if the local municipality. That just seemed fraught for us. And so what we're saying is, no, let's take that out. Let's allow them in under the strict requirements that the board sets. So the board is the one that says, Well, you're working with a CUD, here you go. Oh, you're near a CUD, let us do an analysis. Okay, we've decided you don't threaten the CUD, here's a grant. Oh, you will threaten a CUD? No, you're ineligible. By virtue of, as you say, Mr. Chair, E on page 19 or something, where the grant is clearly cannot go out. And we appreciated your language there. You made it more clear. A grant cannot go to an entity other than a CUD unless X and Y.
Okay, so going to D, and again, I just want to understand the thought path here. And I think you've been clear about how a municipality is going to be, they essentially, so in D, we've got a private ISP that can offer service in a town that is not part of a CUD. And any grant that would go to that private ISP would have to be approved by the board. Obviously, all these grants are approved by the board. But what you're saying is a municipality is going to be supportive of any ISP that comes in to suit their needs, which have been unserved so far.
Yeah, we didn't find that to be a meaningful check with the select board, so we took it out.
Yep.
I would find it helpful to see more of is there more language with this, or is this the language? So in terms of where the board is, have you identified?
But then we go down
criteria?
to, is it page 19, which says the board can't do a grant unless it doesn't interfere, it, meets all the speed and open access requirements. So
Page
it's
20.
It's the bottom of page
20.
20.
Yeah,
And none of that has changed.
right.
Yeah, in fact, this is your language
Yeah.
tidying up our approach.
Laura, cut me off when you want to jump in here, but I don't know how productive it is for us to kind of grind through this. I want to, I understand why you want to get rid of this, we'll call it paragraph D under the eligible provider definition. I get it. I understand what your logic is, but and Senator Brock, I also understand the kind of the Berkshire example, although it's not relevant because Berkshire is in a CUD. But I want to try and understand an example of like Charlotte. Charlotte is not in a CUD. They are clearly served by Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom, for example. But where would a town like, so if the town of Charlotte is interested in, working in conjunction with a private internet service provider in getting universal service in their town, how would they go about doing that? If we just were left with the first three, would they be ineligible for I guess they would go through B.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Apply for a grant.
Yep. Right. Through B, through through a small telco.
Right.
Okay, I think I understand. I've got to think through the permutations of this, which you guys obviously have spent a lot of time doing, but.
Yes, to the point of having headaches. I
Yeah.
think we're all trying to do the same thing. We're trying to we're trying to empower the CUDs, and they are our best hope for getting stuff out to where it isn't. But, part of this was in another section here, downtown Barry and downtown Montpelier are covered. But there's still some roads up there that are not covered and are probably not going to get covered. And every town, the iterations are such that we can never figure it all out. So we're trying to set broad terms. This is who can apply. These are the situations, and let the board make the decisions based on the reality on the ground, which could be very different 6 months from now than it is now. Within the broad goal of getting as much fiber out there as possible. So, oh yeah, we
Okay,
added.
well,
under-
thank you for taking me through your thought process there. That was helpful.
Okay, we did add unorganized town or gore to municipality, just to make sure that doesn't come up. Let's see, I'm on page 9, and Maria, the House proposal strikes communications carrier. We're okay with telecommunications carrier, and then we put a definition for small. Is
Oh,
that what we're doing here?
I think you're reverting to your small communications carrier definition. So they're eligible to apply for grant, and you're using your same definition with one exception, and that's under subdivision 10B. You've increased from 3 to 5 the number of
5
counties.
communities. Yep. And we've agreed to strike out community and do municipality.
Madam Chair, can I just jump in?
Yes.
This little change here in 12 is important because we got rid of community as a definition, and particularly, basically what we're thinking we all mean is if Waitsfield Telecom comes into Charlotte and says, we'll build Charlotte, then they have to really build all of Charlotte. They can't build a little bit of it if they want to be. So we've pegged it to the municipality. For that matter, if Consolidated wants to come in and build Plainfield, I think there's a CUD issue there, but the point is, if we don't, I think you all have convinced me we should be a little more agnostic about who's doing the building, but we're trying to make it clear that universal means a town. It doesn't mean all of Waitsfield Telecom's territory. It means a town that you're agreeing to by contract and therefore in a grant proposal. So we tried, first of all, it's bad to leave community in there after we agreed with you to strike that as a sort of relevant term, but also wanted to make it more clear here. I think it's an important change.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes.
is your preference to go through all of the changes and then kind of take questions, or do you want to
Well,
just kind of take it
I
as
think
it comes?
this is where we have struggled. Just trying to find the right wording. And I think once we get through this, it's pretty clear sailing.
So there's a couple of scenarios that I have in my head that I wonder how they would work out in your proposal. And so we have the largest telephone provider who has secured massive investment, largely, I believe, or it's do or die time for them. And they're in the process of overbuilding one of our cable companies in a lot of our large towns to shore up their network, because they're not going to be here if they don't do that. And so in this proposal that you have sent back, for instance, that's happening in a town that's close to me, that's part of a CUD, Brattleboro. And so Brattleboro is not, the first town that would be covered in that CUD, but there certainly are areas of that town out on the hills where, of course, no one has covered that will be that are necessary for coverage. So would this telephone company be eligible if the board approved for funding to do kind of that outskirts area, even though this town is part of a CUD, that area is part of the CUD's build plan, and they're not going to be there for a while, probably, maybe 2 or 3 years.
I
Do you
think
understand the
Yeah,
scenario?
I
Okay.
think
not unless the
but that's where the board makes a judgment call. If this carrier can do 100 and get it up right away, and if this is one corner of the CUD and it all gets covered, then the CUD just has to worry about the rest, unless they're depending on the money from that, but that's already served.
but no, I'm not sure, Madam Chair, because you said it's a CUD town.
Yeah.
So
It's the CUD
there's
town.
a CUD town takes it off the table. I mean, for somebody to go around the CUD, that's real clear.
So I was not clear on that, Senator Pearson. So what we are talking about are non-CUD towns?
Yeah, because of the language on 19. And Maria, jump in if we've got this.
Okay, yeah, then we're back to 19, where
Page
Page
20.
19, page 20.
Now page 20.
Bottom of 20.
Now, under your language, the CUD could agree with this private carrier, and they're working in conjunction. Where we had originally the money flowing through the CUD, we're ceding to you that, well, if the CUD signs off on Northern Brattleboro, then great, we get those people internet a little quicker.
And the board would make that determination.
Well, the CUD, yes, that's your construct, that if they're a private carrier working in conjunction with the CUD, they can get the grant directly.
That's our construct, right? And you are changed, but you're changing that, right?
No,
You're not changing
agreeing with that construct, but we're adding the small telecoms in the event they're outside of a CUD territory.
In the event they are outside of a CUD territory. Okay.
plus
Okay.
they got to work through the CUD.
Okay.
Okay.
And the
That's
protection of the CUD resides with the board in that determination. Although I don't think it's a mystery, but yeah.
So what are we protecting the CUD from though? I think that's where I'm getting lost. Senator.
Okay, I think what we're trying to protect the CUD from is cherry picking. Sounds like it may already have happened in this instance. That it sounds like Brattleboro's been being served by this not small telecom provider, downtown for some time. It's like
Cable.
Barry, it's like Montpelier. Yeah.
Well, cable provider, and now
Yes.
now the telecom is going to
Yes.
overbuild the cable.
Okay. They're stringing fiber in my backyard. I believe
Right.
it's consolidated.
Right.
That's a good thing. There's going to be fiber. We are in central Vermont fiber. And so overbuild would be they're going through here, and we've talked about that. But if they want a grant, I mean, everything that's happening here and happening in Brattleboro is on the major providers' dime. They're funding it. There's no way they're getting a grant to string their fiber in what is already a served area. If they say, oh, but we'd do the top of the hill on North Street, but once you get up there, there's only 2 people per square mile. So if, we'd like to go there and we'd like to apply for a grant, as long as the board determines that the CUD isn't going there, it's not a major road. We don't want a major provider now coming in and doing all of Route 12 along the road and then leaving the CUD to have to go up in the hills, which is what's happened up till now and has happened with electricity in the past. So if you want to string fiber somewhere that isn't in your present serve, you know, if you want to, Franklin Telephone wants to go to Berkshire, it's in a CUD, but that's the board will have to look at that and say, yep, that'll get the fiber in there. And it's not going to negatively impact the CUD's future plans. And what's likely to happen is there'll be an agreement that when the CUD gets the, you know, there'll be some accommodation worked out. But the control is in the board so that you can't just run, you know, you're a big provider or you're a small provider, you can't just run down the valley and leave
Right.
the CUDs then to have to deal with you to get up on the hill.
Okay, and so the CUDs are, they have to have a plan for all the unserved and underserved addresses in any town that becomes a member. And so I'm still, in this instance, so I think Berkshire is a member of a CUD. Franklin is not a member of a CUD.
Right.
And so in this instance, so in our construct, Franklin, you know, was free to work with any provider that wanted to finish out Franklin. Any provider that wanted to finish out Franklin, they were able to access funds. And for Berkshire, they would have to talk with the CUD about that.
Right.
And in
Or the
what I believe is
municipality, which
no,
is
because not in ours. In ours, it was the CUD because they are part of the CUD already. So what I'm trying to understand is now what you're proposing is in Berkshire, if a small provider wants to come in, they can bypass the CUD by going to the board for a determination. If the board determines that this does not harm the CUD or undermine the CUD, or it's not going to be building in, you know, the area that the CUD is planning to build in, that the board could make that determination.
I mean,
And so that so then I understand that. And so do we still have the same construct where in Franklin, it's kind of anyone can come forward and say, I want to finish Franklin because Franklin's not part of a CUD? Or do people have to go to the board for Franklin as well?
Well, they go to the
But
board.
this is to get a grant.
Period. Okay.
So anybody, I think,
Yeah, you have to go to the board to get a grant.
yeah, you have to go to the board to get a grant. So anybody can go to the board and say, this is an underserved area. Nobody wants to do it. If you give me a grant, I'll do it.
So
And they have to have a
technically,
universal service plan.
Yes.
they have to have a universal service plan. So technically, back to my Brattleboro example, if we had a provider come forward and say, you know, we're already overbuilding the whole cable company here with fiber to stay alive. And we'd like to extend outside of that cable area and our traditional area and build in the hills of North Brattleboro. I think it's actually West Brattleboro. It's West Brattleboro, excuse me. We want to build in the hills of West Brattleboro. that provider could go to the board and say, we want to build there. That CUD is not going to be there for 3.5, 4 years. This is going to cost us X amount of dollars. They've shown that it might cost them, X amount of dollars. And the board could say, okay, we're going to go with, tell me why though. I don't understand why.
There's nothing in our construct that jeopardizes a CUD. If West Brattleboro is part of a CUD, then it's a hard wall, just like your construct. There's nothing changing between there's nothing more permissive about who plays within a CUD between the House and what we've put on the table and what you've put on the table.
So,
If you want to go to West Brattleboro, then you need to work in conjunction with the CUD. And you can say to them, you guys get me a grant. And we're talking small communications carriers, not the big guys, the guys that have the money to overdo. Okay. We're talking small guys. Duncan Cable.
West Brattleboro and Berkshire is who the provider is then. That's what
provider is. Yeah.
Okay.
We're talking small guys, not
okay.
Not consolidated. They
your
have to go
definition-
through the CUD.
Does the small provider definition include any providers that the General Assembly has asked for a federal audit on for performance?
I have no idea.
I don't know. Good question.
It does.
Okay.
That's going to
clearly
be
does.
exciting.
I mean, I think
Okay,
RPA is small telco. So did the earlier version, right?
Not our version.
Yeah, and that's covered in subsection 10A.
Yeah.
It's a carrier that's elected to be regulated under subsection 227DA of this title.
That was also, we'd all, I thought, agreed on that.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, but that's included.
I'm just saying that's not a change, is all.
Yeah.
What is a change is that if such a carrier wants to come forward and ask for a grant outside of a CUD territory, and they're willing to commit to universal service 100, then they would be eligible for a grant.
So, Senator, I would just say, I'm a little concerned about that last question that I asked you, and two really key principles that we had in guiding our bill, and I presume that my chair will redirect me if I get wayward here, but we really had two principles around universality and accountability. And the accountability, we have a lot of examples of where that has left Vermonters really hung out to dry and in a really bad position. And in the instance of the provider that the General Assembly asked for a federal fiscal and performance audit, that actually set rural Vermont back probably 10 years. And that provider continues to not really be cooperative because they don't have to be, because we don't have the ability to regulate them, which is why we really focused on the CUD model. And so that is that's something that I'm thinking about, and I'm going to mute myself and keep thinking.
Okay. I mean, I think that's not what we're thinking about, and I would assume that the board would also be very interested in whether or not you were being federally audited and what your performance. I know when we did the grants last year, you didn't get the money until the performance audit was completed. And
yes, and those audits, I think, were they were self-attestations.
We are on the floor in 16 minutes. And I don't know if there's anything on the floor, but we're there. And
Is there more that we should look at, Mr. Chair and
Let's
Madam
see,
Chair?
that's what we've jumped around, and part of it is that this is organized so that you have to jump around, which makes it.
Why don't we move to page 10 and
And
keep going from there?
That's exactly where I am. Okay, we've all agreed on transferring the funds. Okay, this is a section that we've added under the powers of the board, which is funding for comprehensive statewide fiber optic engineering design. You know, we've talked about compatibility. This is permissive in case the board feels that they need this. But that's in there. And there's again, trying to make sure that when we end up, and this is Senator Pearson's, there's two sections to this, right? Senator Pearson, there's this one, and there's
Yeah.
one further down.
They're both permissive. It just that should the board want to do this, and we did all agree on language that they should create a standard for CUDs. We should make sure that they could use funds to basically accomplish that, and that they may have that as a charge, but it's not directive. But I was just concerned that they may read this and say, "Oh, we don't really have flexibility to spend money this way."
Think about it. It's not complicated. And I'll move us along. We kept in the 1.5 million annual, and we added annually, because you're right, 1.5 million for 8 years is a little slim. For the administrative costs, we've all agreed. Yes. We've agreed to moving it to 5, and we've agreed to having somebody from Vycuda, but we really feel it is important to have the chair chosen by the governor, because we're coming off of the testimony we had about the experience of the telecommunications authority, where, you know, you had one governor that started and the next governor coming in and saying, well, I'm being held accountable, but I don't have any power here. So this is a direct link between the governor and the board, so that the governor has the power, the responsibility, and can be held accountable if they don't do it. But
Understood.
okay, it's not that. There is. All right, we've all agreed. Everything's green. Okay, and then we get to 13. The members will, we will not elect a chair. We need to, they can elect a vice chair. And okay, and then we get down to page 14. That's the second half of Senator Pearson's idea that not only they can also contract to do a fiber optic study. And for some reason, my computer just jumped up to page 38.
That was a signal, Ann.
Wishful thinking.
Okay. Yeah, that somebody's controlling it.
It's Pearson.
Pearson's controlling it. Okay. All right. So
Bottom of page 14. Is that our next
yeah,
thing?
I'm I think that's it. And then I'm getting back to 14, 15, 14. That's 14 for that. The next place we've added something. Oh, yeah. I think we just added the number correctly. And then the director can hire as many people as he wants, or contract, that's as long as they're under budget or within budget. I'm up on 19. This was Senator Brock's proposal that the board is also charged with establishing a continuity of operation plan applicable to a CUD-owned network that could assume the board contemplated, operational control. This is a CUD that is going under, and you've got folks that are dependent on it. You got a volunteer board down there and they're walking away. This says that our board is, should have a continuity plan to ensure the reliability of that CUD system while whatever is going on gets straightened out. And this could mean that they would take control, that, they would put in a temporary operator, but that the focus is making sure that the service continues to be provided. So.
And this is, I'm sorry, what page is this?
This is 19.
It's in blue towards the end of the page.
Yeah. Actually,
Okay.
there's 2 4s, Maria. I think we may need to, it says, and renumbering. So she hasn't renumbered it.
Yeah.
So, okay. And we are all, this works with most, in fact, I'm not aware of any CUDs that are operators at this point.
Yeah.
So
No,
this works.
Yeah.
So then what would this do if we had it for a CUD owned network? So we have a partnership with a CUD and one of our telcos. The telco is the operator, the CUD is the coordinator, really making sure that we're getting to the last mile. And a continuity of operations plan applicable to CUD owned networks. And contemplates the board assuming
the lights
control
on.
of the network. So we have an existing provider, who, so this is like if someone went into bankruptcy, for instance.
Yeah, exactly.
Senator Brock, this is
Okay.
your idea. Yeah, this is for
some other failure, and we're trying to look at it broadly without being specific and prescriptive. We don't know all the bad things that could happen to a CUD effectively exploding. And we wanted just to provide some cover. And the task here is for the board to figure out what that continuity of operations plan ought to look like, rather than our trying to do it at this level. The point, though, is that once a CUD is up and running and people are dependent upon it, there can be all kinds of things that can go drastically wrong and that could constitute a failure. And we want the board to really just think through the contingency planning aspect of it, to be prepared to know what we will do when and if something like that happens. That's all this requires.
So if we have a CUD that fails and their operator is fine,
Then their
a CUD
operator
wouldn't fail. A CUD is just a
Well,
municipality. It's just it's just a board.
it wouldn't, but their board and the control and the operational aspects that they oversee that the operator does may fail. And yes, both could fail. They could stop paying the operator, for example.
Okay.
And then what?
Yeah.
So as I say, there are innumerable things that could happen that could go wrong. And the point of all of this is to ensure that the board has a plan to deal with things that go wrong
So,
and power to act on it.
can I ask a follow-up question here with regards to this? So we want to establish a continuity of operations plan only to CUD-owned networks, not publicly funded networks.
That's a good question. It would not be beyond the realm of possibility to think about publicly funded, but I really think about the degree to which the board would have control over the operator of the quote publicly funded network. If we fund, for example, a small telecommunications carrier, that I just wonder if we could go that far.
Well,
We can
that's
stick with the CUD.
right.
it's
And so
tricky. They already exist. You know, if we build
Yep.
10% of their network and they go bankrupt, do we get the whole thing?
Yeah.
That'd be hard.
Also, a thing in here about publicly built assets.
Yeah.
Right. We'd already agreed to that. That was going to be my
Yes.
point. This is just can we keep the lights on for those people depending on that service? The board, that should sort of fall to the board in this opportunity.
While the CUD gets its act back in order, the guy that was in charge and has all the computer passwords quits and takes the passwords with him or her. And I work for a place where that happened.
Yeah, I just, I back to my West Brattleboro example, which could be, in the aggregate, it could be, 20 towns that the board could say, 20 large towns that are mostly covered, that probably will not be the top of the list, that our large provider might want to come in, as they're overbuilding our large cable company and do like the outskirts. And we're not going to be, we're not looking for continuity of operations planning for that provider, even though their predecessors have gone bankrupt a few times in the state of Vermont. So that's my,
Or at least we should be prepared for it now.
there you go.
Okay. Moving on to 21, I think we've agreed. Okay. A number on page 21, this is the overbuild. And this was actually Irv Tomei's suggestion under 2. An overbuild is incidental to the overall objective of the universal service plan required for funding under this program. This is in order to get from hill A to hill B, we've got to go through the valley that your big guy already has. But I think this is a check on the CUDs that says, you can't do what's happening in Brattleboro and go in and your plan is you're going to build a place where it's already served. That going through that fully served valley straight road is incidental to getting from hill A to hill B. You may have to go through downtown Montpelier to get to Calais. And that's, and I think we had essentially the same, I think mostly the incidental got added. We had the same language in there. 3 is reworded. We want to strike out 4.
G.
Madam Chair.
G. Yeah. Okay. Because this is because.
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I have a crack at it, this is where
Yeah.
we were sort of saying the department had the next 6 months to keep doing some of what it's doing. You pointed out that was tricky under ARPA because of 25.3. So what we've done here, the construct is and what is that? That's the line extension program, the connectivity. I can never keep it all straight.
It's line extension.
Line
Yeah.
extension.
Mhm.
What we're saying is line extension continues to exist until the end of this year. As it is, it's already got money. We're adding, provided, excuse me, provided it doesn't jeopardize CUDs, the commissioner can continue to operate that program until the end of the year, at which point it all flows under the board. We upgrade it to the 100, and we add that continuity. So we were trying to neatly handle this, and that's our attempt here.
What
Wait,
we've
just
been
to be
doing.
clear, you're striking this language?
Yes.
Well, the
And
construct, the words are tricky, but the net effect is program continues as it is today, and then not the change, not the updates of 100 right away, but exactly as it is today, except the caveat of can't hurt the CUDs. Then in January, all of your updates to the 100 and all that, and the program itself and the money flows under the board. Right?
Take
For
this
the
out
current
and
line
add
extension
it.
program.
And just to be clear, actually, it's the connectivity initiative.
Yes.
Which is some line extensions, I think.
Right, which is, so you've left it, so you have, if you want to look at the language, I think your thinking was you've already funded, you've given an additional 1.6 million to the line extension program that you created last year.
That's the individual grants.
That's for
to
the
homeowner.
consumers, up to $3,000. Your proposal is to strike this line extension funding opportunity, but then to allow connectivity initiative grants to continue to go out at 25.3 until January to any ISP, provided they don't undermine or conflict with the deployment plans of the CUD. So that might be an opportunity for line extensions, and they meet the other conditions of the connectivity initiative.
This would be consumer driven, not provider driven.
No, this
Like
would
the
be
line-
provider driven. The line extension program as it existed, as you created last year, continues with the additional 1.6 million that you appropriated in Act 9. That's going to continue through this calendar year.
That's for the consumers. This is
That's for consumers.
program the department's been running, which is generally the big ISPs have come in and said, we'll do an extra 10 miles. If, for X amount of money, there's been RFPs. This would allow that to continue. And the commissioner said she doesn't intend to do anything because she's focusing on CUDs right now. But if somebody wanted to come in and say, okay, for X thousand whatever dollars, we would like to extend our 25.3 service up the hill another mile or two. If it would be the department decides that does not, they aren't extending it out where the CUD is planning on building next year, but they're literally going up in the hills where no one's likely to go, they can give them the grant. And part of this is knowing you got 25.3 going halfway up the hill. It's going to be a long time for anyone gets fiber strung up there. So you have to put 25.3 further out if you want to get those folks. We have a lobbyist who lives, is it eighth of a mile from where the Comcast lines stop, and she's working on 4.1.
Madam Chair,
And
More than I have.
yeah, but no one's going to get up there for a while with broadband.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're supposed to be on the floor, and I'm wondering if I should
Yes.
leave you at it.
Oh, you've got, I don't know. Maybe Faith could check and see, was there There wasn't anything on the calendar, right?
There's nothing posted.
Well,
Nothing posted.
there's the small amount of our miscellaneous energy bill, which
Well, which maybe they were, okay, yeah, why don't
we're
you
hoping to
go?
put into final stages.
Okay,
Yeah,
And-
I'm concerned that there may be moves to suspend the rules on some of the things.
oh,
we've done.
all right, so I guess we're out. I think,
It'll be quick, I would guess.
yeah.
Yep.
Are there any other, all I'm seeing is green from now on. We could rejoin you after now finance is meeting at 1:30.
Yep.
So,
Frankly, I think a lot of this is pretty self-explanatory.
yeah, I do
In terms of
too.
walking through it, and maybe we can enlist Maria if we've got questions on those things.
Okay.
I want to make sure we have another meeting time
Right.
before we adjourn. We're getting
Yes.
heat from our leader that they'd like to see some resolution on this
Health
conference
and
committee.
welfare is, yeah, well, I've still got the miscellaneous tax
I
bill.
know
I'm
you do.
assuming you're going to ask for a committee at conference. Health and welfare is meeting at 3:30, but I told them no. I couldn't guarantee I'd be there. So we could meet when we can't be on the floor for more than 1:30. You want to try for 3:30, 3 o'clock?
I would say the later in the afternoon, the better. I think we're dealing with cannabis this afternoon. which is
Oh,
good.
okay, 4:30?
If we could do 4:30, that would be better.
Okay.
I think that
Okay.
would be safer for us.
Okay.
So
And
why don't we
hopefully
say 4:30?
finance can finish up its bills if no one else drops any on us and get back.
Okay.
Okay, 4:30.
Okay, we'll see you at 4:30. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.